Archana, hi, good to have you with us. How have you been?
Thank you so much. Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Archana. It's good to have you with us. I've been excited about all the sessions that we've been doing in the fintech space, in the wealth tech space, right? Money
Hmm.
management has become just so much more important in the last, few years. I think 2020 has been a very, differentiated year. It's been a year where people actually started to actually got the time, most importantly, right, to kind of
Great.
really look at and spend time on their portfolios, right? We've seen the
Hmm.
surge that we have, right, in terms of equity participations. We've seen, I mean, and not just that, right? I think all asset classes have kind of grown, right?
Great.
Um, there was a recent conversation that I was in, right, and I was talking to a very dear friend, right, who is also in money management. And I think what we could possibly sense is the excess liquidity which is now kind of in the system, which is chasing few assets, right? And this is very unreal, right? This has never happened. Money used to largely be locked into assets like real estate. It used to be locked in assets like gold. It used to be locked in assets like
Bank
bank
account.
FDs, bank accounts, right, and not necessarily transactional assets, right? But I think this movement has been phenomenal. I think it's good for a country like India, which needs more and more public capital to come in and support entrepreneurs, right? Equity investing is something which is picked up in a beautiful way. But what has also happened is that we're in complex times, right? Life and longevity is very uncertain, right? And that thus requires for a holistic understanding of an individual and asset management, right? In many such ways, right? At Pickright, you're doing a lot of that, right? And we're going to talk about all of that as we go along in the session. But it's good to have you with us, Archana.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you
and
so
as
much. And I really like the way how you have articulated longevity and how the expectancy, right? How COVID actually has set us. So one is the excess
right,
capital and one is the uncertainty. And I think that is what will be propelling and we will holistically. So yeah, I'm super excited to talk about this, right?
absolutely.
What we are doing.
So,
Yeah.
so Archana, we'll start with a quick round of introduction, right?
Mhm.
I think of a lot of good things that you've done. I'd love to start this conversation with that, and from there we navigate this discussion into talking more about Pickright, right? My sense is by the end of it, there are many people who are going to be watching this are going to be motivated to be investing sensibly. I think that's the most important term right
Yeah,
now
agreed.
in the kind of markets that are the market frenzy that we're in, right? So Ashna, would love to know a little more about yourself, and then from there we take it forward.
Yeah. So I come from a pretty much tech background. I'm a hardcore coder. I started my career with coding, and I was with UBS Swiss Bank in Connecticut, Stanford. Then was with the Silicon Valley startup as an architect, which was later acquired by Oracle. Was been in Oracle in the solutions team, doing solutions coding in the business team, and then after coming back from US, then thought of starting something
Right.
for women entrepreneurs and the retired folks where they can get their second income. My mom being an artist, so got inspired by her painting, so started something way too early in 2013-14, where even the hobby space or the artisans did not really take off, so probably I was too early in that space. So started did it everything bootstrapped, built the whole platform by myself, coded and got the artisans, but did not really it did not take off for two reasons. One being we are too early into that space and the logistics was super expensive, being these are all fragile goods and which are priceless and matchless, so
Right.
insurance. So that's where so left that and started joined ShopX as a heading complete engineering and growth verticals, and always while working and starting my career in the investment banking, always there was always going back in the mind that when we start earning, there is no right place to actually automatically someone to take care of my investments, where I say this 10,000 should go every month in a diversified way. Either
Right.
it is a mutual fund SIP where some mutual fund distributor tells me where to put it, and
Right.
again I don't know when to exit, right? And so there was always a gap on how to actually make money work for you, because
Right.
that is not your expertise. Your expertise is what you're good at, doing coding or doing your
Right.
daily job. And that's what always it was never a great into the money management. Then I met Naman, my co-founder. Naman was
Right.
working with me in ShopX. Naman comes from fintech background. He was AIML expert, and Naman also has Naman came up with like we need a complete transparent platform where complete end-to-end recommendation management, holistic wealth management. I really like the way you use the word holistic, where we call it as a unified platform where hyper personalization per user takes place. So that's where we both left our jobs, started this Pickright, and journey started, and we are 2.5 years into Pickright, and this is where we are.
Super. Archana, that's an interesting one, right? I think many of the points that you kind of highlighted, and I'm sure every working professional can actually relate with the problem that you highlighted, right? You get that you get that salary, you get that payout, right, by the end of the month, and how you wish there was somebody who could just sort of at a click of a button guide you, and that money just could sort of take path, right?
Yeah.
And it could continue to sort of change course, right? It continues to become that entire course becomes intelligent in itself, right?
Exactly, and that's what we are building, and that's what user profiling, right? That's the core of it. Yeah.
Super. So Archana, my question, right? You kind of in a way took us in that direction, and this was I'd love to understand more, right? Tell us a little more about that construct, right? In Pickright. Now, this is a cluttered space, and I'm sure you will understand where I'm coming from, right? There are a lot of advisors, there are a lot of boutique firms. SEBI is coming out with a lot of guidelines, right, in terms of how, for example, a distributor is going to operate, how an investment advisor is going to operate, right? There are certifications that are being built in, right? A lot of that is now becoming very thick. Earlier, it used to be very, very loosely built, right? So there's a lot of movement which is happening, right? How do you differentiate yourself in an environment like this, right? I personally believe touch and feel is still very, very important, right? When it comes to money management, India is still a market where the decision makers are essentially people who were born mostly in a physical setting, right? And technology happened, right? For kids, who were born after 2000, basically 10, life has been very different, right? But I think pre that, we're still a market which needs that handholding, right? So I'd love to understand where are you when it comes to the offering, right? I'd love to understand, what is it that you're offering, how you're differentiating yourself vis-a-vis what's happening in the market.
Okay. There's so many questions there. I'll try to answer one after the another and say if I missed out, I'll try to cover. So one thing is SEBI getting into the different norms and whatever it is. So I personally think that is a very good thing to happen, because regulation, when you get into a regulation, when you have a clarity and a structured way of how business has to happen, how investment has to happen, right? That actually paves the way, gives clarity on how digital platforms can actually even function in the space. So I personally, I kind of concur with what SEBI is doing, because it gives a clarity on what needs to be done, what cannot be done, and everything is, see, and going ahead, right? Though we are on a touch and feel, the 2000 born ones are the ones in the next 5 years who will be start working. So it needs to be a digital led platform. At the end, it needs to be a digital-led platform where there is a part of touch and feel. So it should be always a balance between 80-20, and that is what in Pickright we always strive to work it. So one is the SEBI. So now getting on to how do we even handle or focus in this cluttered space? I think that's the third question. How do we do handle in the? So yes, this is for sure. It is a cluttered space where you have boutique firms, where you have individual advisors, where you have other startups who are into portfolio basketing. But let me tell you, India is super big. Only 4% of Indian population so far have actually in the investment. So it is not even a tip of iceberg when you look at the mass of Indian population. And now, as we all looking into, now it is all gig economy. It is more of freelancing and the job uncertainty, and where people want to work for some time. So we are where US was probably 15-20 years ago, and where we are now, where we are getting into part-time jobs, freelancers. So everyone wants to get into investment somewhere or the other, and needs something on their learning, like where we start learning about the user. The system becomes more intelligent about the user and tells where, well, your 10,000 needs to be divided in this way. You already have a term insurance, so you don't need another insurance. right? This is where you should, and now you have built your emergency fund. Now this is the fund where you should go and invest in the other asset classes.
Sure.
So that is the core intelligence is what Pickright is building, and where we call it as a hyper personalized portfolio management. So as a user, when someone comes on to Pickright, we actually understand the user, connect to the connected system, get the data, and based on what the user should be saving across different asset classes and how it is to be, that is the first step what we do. And then the system starts continuously learning about the user and navigates the user to different asset classes. So you come in and you already have covered all your emergency funds, and we know that it is, and according to your risk, I'm just taking an example, you are at an aggressive. So system says, okay, so since you're aggressive, you're 10%, you can either go and put in P2P loan, real estate tokens, or your cryptos. So that way, so for a person who is risk moderate, they will say that no, you have to actually build your complete emergency fund or insurance. You cannot even go and get into something which even is an aggressive portfolio.
Right.
So that's the journey what Pickright, Naman and I are very passionate that you should be doing what you are interested in.
Correct. Archana, that's a very interesting point that you highlighted. Right now, my question is, right, I mean, when I hear you and when I hear what you say, right, my understanding is that, is it a tool or a platform which is being designed for the ones who are now starting out, right? They're not necessarily people who've been investing, who've been doing something or the other, right? With some logic, because of some relationships, randomly. I mean, what's the positioning, right? Are you for the people who are now, coming to workforce, right, where they'll have consistency of incoming capital, visibility of that, and those are the people that you're kind of going to define for, or like I said, right, is this for people who've already been investing? Which is the segment that you're going after?
No, it's a very, very right question. So Pickright is designed to support both. So as a starter, you will get your portfolio out there. As if you're already a person who has invested, we can pull up your data from all the connected systems wherever you have invested, either through a PDF upload or if we are connected to them. So we are today partnered with more than 10 plus partners. And as we are expanding by the year end, we will be present and connected with more than 50 plus partners in the complete indirect and direct asset classes. So we can pull up your data, and complete portfolio end to end will be built, telling this is the area where you're already exposed, this is the better area where you can take it. So Pickright is building to cater to two different audience. One, you're starting a journey, we would love you, because Pickright should be the first platform window where you can do everything. So I call it as one unified for diversification, unification for diversification. And the second, you are already an investor, you have put in money, and then you want to actually get advisory on the existing and see where else you can diversify, because we know you have covered many of them and you still have cash or disposable income. So that is where we want to position ourselves in. So as a platform, we support both of these two type of audience.
Very interesting. Archana, you spoke of personalization, right? Now, personalization is an extremely difficult and a challenging term, right? Until recently, and even if you look at, for example, many of the institutions today that are into any kind of investment advisory, these are essentially two-dimensional systems, right? These are systems that make you answer just one of few questions, and the way they kind of project is that we know you pretty much, 360 degrees, right? Now, the biggest of all flaws when it comes to all of what you're doing is essentially that you don't know, for example, the industry that the individual is working in, right? We've seen what 2020 is kind of done, right? And this has been an year of transition, and a lot of new normals are going to get established, right? We're not necessarily going to be the same ecosystem, which means it's going to be a very difficult environment for a lot of people, right? And you kind of alluded to it, right? Where you said that gig is kind of picking up. My sense is all of this is going to become very, very thick, and tech is going to be integrating all of this together, right? That essentially means seamless is going to be there. What I is possibly doing is that, unlike what existed in the world before 2020, right, was, people were employed in a certain form and way. There was a certain income that they could sort of see coming. All of that was there, right? It was all predictable. Now the phase that we're entering, and I think next couple of years is going to thicken up. is that there's a lot of unpredictability which is going to come in, right? That essentially means that the personalization will have to be very, very different, right? Plus, relationship status are changing, right? Responsibilities are changing. Ownership of assets is kind of changing, right? It is going to be an extremely complicated environment, right? Now, when you say personalization, what exactly are we talking about here? Is this an understanding that you build basis, like I said, right? Some investments that an individual has made, or do you factor in a lot of these macros and systemic issues that will possibly play into the life of an individual, which he or she cannot control beyond a certain point, right? And that is, to me, part of customization and personalization when you talk of especially trying to plan future,
Yeah.
right? And picking up assets, right? How are you visualizing this? How are you cutting this one?
Yeah. So one thing is, definitely we are in it's there is like how you have BCAD, you have pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think that's going to what it is, right? So you will be talking like in pre-COVID days and post-COVID days. So I completely agree. Whatever has been in pre-COVID is not in post-COVID. So there are job uncertainties. There are people who the new normal has set itself where everything is dynamic and fluid. So how do we handle it? One thing is, no one knows future, and we personalize. So for us, I'll tell you what is personalization. So today existing, when you say it is all two-dimensional, what does what a platform can ask what a user wants and can give with an assumption, knowing that I know what this user wants, right? But that is exactly not what Pickright is operating also. What we call it as personalization is we take few of the questionnaires from the user, bucket them under different buckets where they fall, and try to get data from the connected systems like their
Right.
CIBIL score, from account aggregated systems, from the DAPA framework, and from their portfolio, what they are existing, right? And then the initial AI/ML will start giving an initial portfolio of what you have, asking you have an insurance, so you don't need to take an insurance. So based on different questionnaires, the initial portfolio will be set. So that's the first level of personalization what we will get. And the next ones where you asked, how do I factor what are the uncertainties? If I could factor the uncertainties of someone else's future, then I don't think I'll be here. I'm
Right.
God somewhere there, right? So what we basically, Naman and I are, we are tech people, right? We are logic. What we can do is we start learning about the user's behavior on the system.
Right.
How the user, the minute user says I'm, then when I'll give you an example. When the portfolio, when system says this is the best thing where you will get around 10 to 12% returns over a 2-year period of time, and the user says no, I would be needing 25% for the user, then we know, though the risk questionnaire is moderate, the person is looking for an aggressive type of a thing. So we start learning about the user behavior. When there is a rebalancing, and when the user doesn't perform the rebalancing, or when we get the user's assets onto the platform, and we have seen a pattern now, right? We start learning about the user. So this learning is a curve which will happen over a period of time. The minute the user comes onto the platform, there is something only at a 25% or 30% we learn about the user. And then based on the user's behavior, the complete user journey. And that's where we know you have already invested 1 lakh rupees and you made this thing. So now we want you to go and invest in somewhere else, or use this money for this. So that is the personalization part which we are creating, rather than factoring the different uncertainties, but plan it in such a way that he or she is able to handle the uncertainties. We cannot plan the uncertainties.
Sure. Interesting. Archana, how do you differentiate between two individuals, right, who could possibly be answering the same questionnaire, pretty much the same answers, right? How do you differentiate that, right? And assuming, I don't want to say, for example, factor in their existing portfolios as part of the assessment process, right? Because assessment has to happen independent of what I've invested in, right? And that could be grossly wrong than what I possibly have to be doing, right? How do you differentiate between two individuals, right? Ashu could be one individual, Archana could be the other individual, right? Answering exactly the same questions. Uh, how do you differentiate between the two? Or is there going to be a similar recommendation that gets given to each one of them to start with? And over a period of time, like you said, right, as you learn more about his or her behavior, right, you tend to then factor in those elements. And then the path and the engagement kind of changes, right? Because the suitability of assets could be different, right?
Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah.
fair understanding, Venerable?
No, you're absolutely right. You all see, we always go with the theory of grouping and theory of elimination, right? When you
Right.
start building something, right?
Right.
So when you and I come onto the platform, so it buckets on, right from the gender. So you start from the gender, you start
Right.
from the age, what is the earning capacity, what asset classes already have, what is your risk. So these different parameters under align on, and then your portfolio starts automatically building based on the inputs, based on your CIBIL score, based on your investments, everything. So if we both fall exactly in every other measure, assuming the gender is right, the age group is right, our investments are equal, everything is equal, then our risk, everything, so we will be getting a similar portfolio to all of both of us, right, to start with. Then what exactly else what we have built in is, you can go and say, then these are my already assets which I have already invested. So that actually starts putting, okay, you are already exposed this, then the customization starts. Or you can go and say, what we have built a tool is, so I'm no longer interested in putting in ETF gold. So that can be customized further. So there will be a personalization, customization for the user to go ahead and further do it, so that a portfolio can still be modified based on the user's probability. And then the existing assets, and then that's how the user journey starts, where the learning takes place. But the first level is always the gender, the age group, the earnings, the
Right.
investments, all of this come into picture to start with.
Archana, fun question, right? How easy or difficult has this been, right? Because when it comes to money management, I think I mean, I have a little bit of an understanding of this topic, right? This is the most inconsistent. Why people are the most serious when it comes to earning money? They're actually uh,
They
you know
don't, yeah, I
they
understand.
don't manage money well, right? And that's actually true for 95% of the people. If I'm if maybe more, right?
Hmm.
They're not necessarily good managers, right? And when you're doing what you're doing, right, how difficult or easy is it, right? Because like I said, right, India is still a market where there's touch and feel is required, right? They still have a banking relationship manager who's coming to them, and and possibly cross selling something or the other, without necessarily keeping that alignment on, right, which possibly you can deliver through technology, right? The trust is high because it's coming from a bank, right? Uh, how difficult or easy has this been for you, right, to go out and convince
Yeah.
these investors to come onto your platform and be investing, and you essentially doing this personalization and guiding them through the journey?
Hmm.
And of course, retentions, right? Retentions is the biggest of all problems, right? Because
Yeah.
there's constant noise, right, which is there in this ecosystem. Would love to
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, no, difficulty, it is quite difficult, and I don't think any journey is easier. And being in this space, with the trust being a major factor.
Right.
So, yeah, right. So the difficulty of proving something that the platform is capable to handle it is
Right.
the first thing, like how you say touch and feel. So we
Right.
still have a relationship, we still have people calling us when they install an app, or when they look into it, when they do that, and that is still there. So but as time progresses, it will slowly come down, but still we are at 70-30, where people do come, we try to create as much easy journey, where we say this is the best portfolio for you, so that it is seamless and they can go and integrate and do it, rather than they call us. So WhatsApp, so that's one thing. Then the second thing, on the difficulty part, right? Well, building tech itself is also very challenging, if you ask, because we need to
Right.
connect to so many different systems to pull it, right? And now what we are doing is, it's not just B2C. We to answer your how am I earning trust, right?
Right.
We For us, we are a very small team, 10 people team, where our intelligence is built in house, marketing and everything. So
Right.
nothing is outsourced, and we are operationally super lean. So the
Right.
next thing what we are doing is going and integrating with B2B2C providers, where we can be exclusive, or in wealth tech partners, where we can actually help their customers to get their user journey with a plug and play model. So you can
Right.
just put a Pickright and their whole users, the thing we can start creating, right? So that is how we want to handle the
Archana,
trust.
That's an equally competitive area. I mean, you have many such providers who are out there available with SaaS infrastructure, right? I mean, there's Funds India, and there are so many others, right, that are already out there which are making this available, right? And many IFAs, independent advisors, are using a lot of this infrastructure. That's possibly another area of complexity, right? And I think my sense is in a B2B environment, when you actually sort of say get into that game, right? If I am an independent advisor, right, and you charge me something, for example,
I'm not
uh,
going to independent advisors, actually. I'm not doing that.
or I'm saying, independent or wealth management companies, right? My the profitability of my business is largely a function of how much can I squeeze out of you in terms of, say, certain fixed payouts, or profit splits or whatever, right? Even if, for example, it's chartered accountants, right, or independent agents that are out there. I mean, I'm saying there are like a variety of distribution possibilities, right? But in a B2B environment, long and short of it is that it becomes difficult, right, to go out and charge more for what you're bringing to the table. Doesn't that um basically creates an additional layer of complexity in your business operations, right? Because here you're doing something correct. You can directly engage with the customer, right? That's the most easiest. My sense is building that relationship is far more superior than and then following this route, right? Is that a correct understanding? And like you said, right, you're not going to IFAs, right? So you have definitely a point to say, and I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
Why are you sort of choosing this path?
Yeah, no, so to get the trust, right? So for us, we are a fairly young brand, and as you said, right, in investment, people do need trust to
Right.
understand. Like if your friend suggests that this is a better person to manage your funds, you will not even think twice to go ahead and give your funds to that
Right.
particular person, right? So how do we earn trust? So
Interesting.
the trust can be earned when we actually start partnering with companies who are in this space already
Right.
handling. So
Right.
we are partnering with brokers and sub brokers who already have customers, where we can be actually in there with a plug and play model, where people
Interesting.
who are already into equities, they can actually come on to Pickright, where their complete user profiling can be done, and they can start investing in multiple assets with a single click, and their whole rebalancing can be managed. To
Interesting.
start with, we are not going into the individual advisors model so they can use our tech, because as you said, we don't want that overhead, or we don't want to be in that space currently. We want to be ourselves, to be as a smart advisory intelligent platform. Our core is our tech, and where we can actually profile a user. So for us,
Right.
we would love to partner with payment merchants who
Right.
actually have merchant framework in tier 2, tier 3, where they actually make them into neo banking and they get their accounts, right? We can actually support in investment solutions for
Right.
them. So those are
Right.
the ones, and we actually closed a couple of them in the recent last month, to give Pickright as a plugin model. So that is
Interesting.
the approach. So that way, right, we can actually get trust. And once they are in B2B2C and they do it, they know it is Pickright, and because it is co-branded, users will automatically come to B2C Pickright solution. That is
Interesting.
how I can actually build virality with a very limited marketing budget what I have.
I think that's basically lean methodology of scale, kind of scaling, right? And that's a that of partnership, right? That's how you kind of wanting to scale that business, right? But there are complexities, right? When you talk of partnerships, I think it's very important to pick right on partnerships, right? I think it just sort of becomes very important.
Agreed. Yeah. You need to know where you can actually
Absolutely.
complement the other partner, right?
Right.
Then only it makes sense for them also to have us and for us. So it will be, at the time, it is a revenue sharing thing, but it is always complementing is what works, where we can
Interesting.
provide the investment solutions as a plug and play model rather than they building it. So that's
Super.
how I see Pickright scaling for now.
And we hope that these partnerships play out very well. And like I said, right, this is easier said than done, right? And a lot of people who are going to watch this, right, will possibly think that this is easy, right? But I'm sure this is not, right? I know that side of the story, right? Actually, I'm going to move on to the next question, right? Now, when you talk about the business model, right? So two things basically. So, which are the asset classes that you're kind of dealing with right now, or is it a full stack that you're kind of doing? Where are you on those partnerships, right? When you're doing this advisory, right? When you're doing this profiling, personalization that you're kind of doing, What are the assets that you have on the other side to be plugged in? Do you have your distributor's license in place right now, or are you largely restricting yourselves to being an investment advisor? Because SEBI is kind of redefining all of this, right? So where are you on this? Uh, with all of these changing, please.
Yeah, because you'll ask another question, probably I'll forget that
Please.
question. Let me answer this question. So we are purely advisory thing, and we want to be there because that is where we want to build the intelligence, and we feel that is where the scale and growth will be. What we are having today is the direct mutual fund on the platform. We have equities which we have partnered with major brokers, and now we are actually expanding it to other major brokers where we can integrate seamlessly. Then we have digital gold, and now we are opening it up. So today we have mutual fund, digital gold, and equities in the stack. We are connecting to bank FDs and cryptos very shortly. That will be launching on the platform. In the next 3 months, we will be looking at bonds and other indirect asset classes, US equities and real estate tokens to start with. So these are the stacks which we are currently going to build. And we want to be positioned as an intelligent advisory and single click execution, where irrespective of how many connected systems are there, the user still feels that it is single click and one place across the portfolio is managed. And that's what we want to push in ourselves.
Super. Archana, of course, with all of this, right, the business model has to be sort of questioned on, right? And with the recent guidelines that are coming up, right, the business models are kind of taking a different shape. And you know what I'm talking about, right? I'd love to hear from you in terms of how are you doing this, right? Because there are some people who are, when it comes to personalization, customization, there is a premium that there are a lot of people who are charging, right? Because now it's become like a doctor's assignment, right? Where you really have to sort of dissect your patient, in this case, an investor, to understand the nuances that are there and the complexities that are there, and basically help them chart out a path, right? In your case, are you doing the same, or because you're kind of doing it in technology, because there's a platform in play, you're doing it differently, right? And you're doing it at scale. You're prepared to do it at scale and at a very economical value for the investors who are coming in, right? I'd love to understand the business model construct that you bring in place.
Yeah. So one is we since it is a tech, we want to commoditize. I would like to use the word commoditize the financial planning, the investment planning to a retail user. So irrespective, you have 1,000 rupees to save 50,000 or 5 lakhs or 50 lakhs, right? Pickright should be the platform which actually can help you to do it at a very economical cost. So it is like either you take a ready-made pack which is already there, or you want a tailor-made for you. It should be at a very minimal cost where it is managed and maintained. So, and since it is tech, we are prepared, our systems are prepared or prepped for scale. So that is where, and I really like the way you use doctor, because that's Naman's, my co-founder's favorite word. He says how you doctor prescribes, how it is, that's how we dissect the data and we start learning the user, and that's where we do. So is that the question? So it's the tech, and it is very nominal. So we don't even go into your commission model. Probably we will later evolve later, but for now it is a flat fee subscription model.
Archana, I feel for a lot of these independent advisors, right? They're going to be out of their jobs very soon, right? With all of what you are building and say some of the other tech players are building. I think a lot of people who are into financial advisory, right? I'm not really going to comment on the way they're kind of practicing, right? There are some who are doing a good job and transparent job, and then of course, there are some who are not necessarily doing a great job. I think a lot of them are going to be out of business, right? With what possibly you were doing. But I think at the end of the day, I think the investor has to win, right? That confidence has to stay intact, right? And I think the more that money comes into the ecosystem, I think eventually it's the circulation of capital, right? Which helps an economy do better. And I think that's essentially is the most critical, larger, agenda that needs to be focused and solved for. And I think platforms, intelligent platforms, are going to kind of do that, right? Archana, towards the end of the conversation, right? You've been a woman entrepreneur, right? And life is not necessarily easy, right? But before I ask you this question, right? I'm gonna, my second last question in this conversation, right, is that what are the next 2.5 years like for Pickright Technologies? And then we come to the last question of you being a women entrepreneur.
So next 2.5 years are quite exciting. As you rightly said, we are fighting in a complex space. So for us to differentiate ourselves, to build a seamless tech where user becomes confident to part their money, because whether unfortunate or fortunate, people are okay to buy 1,000 rupees dish on Swiggy and throw it away if it's not good. But the same 1,000 rupees, they don't want to invest where the chances of 1,000 becoming more are more than 90%. The way the markets are, right? Like that's how. So we are actually fighting with the mindset. So it is going to be a very interesting times for us. And see, I always say, at the end of the day, do you want a 10 lakh loan on top of your head, or a 10 lakh investment when you sleep, right? Everybody chooses 10 lakh investment. But no one has a path. So for me and Naman, this is very exciting. If we are all equipped to fight this problem and say that we create a path for people to come in and start investing. So that's the first thing that is the fight which we have to do in the next 2.5 years. On the tech side, as you said, right, we want to actually integrate as many direct and indirect assets which are digital form onto Pickright and get onto the connected systems where the user's data can be got onto Pickright, dissected, and be giving a greater investment journey as closer to as what we can. So that is where on the tech, the learning happens. And on that, then we are looking to, on the funding side, we want to raise funds in the next couple of months to take us through this. Then get into where we know our tech can be actually given as a small extensions or plugins to different various operators in the B2B space. So that is where we are looking in the next 2.5 years.
And we wish you all the very best for that one.
Thank
all the milestones that you've set for yourself. Archana, our last question, right? Which is, this last question is essentially for, many people who watch our sessions, right? Our interactions and interviews, right? And we use it for a founder to pass on his or her learnings to the others, right? Who are out there. We believe everybody's journey is very, very unique, right? And there's something that you can always share, right? It could be an advice, it could be suggestion, right? You've been a woman entrepreneur, and it's not necessarily very easy, right? And especially when it comes to money management, there are certain preconceived notions. I don't agree with them. I think, there's a lot of sensibility and emotional intelligence that women have to handle money better and prioritized, right? That said, there are these tendencies and there are these complexities that you have to deal with. There are these pre-established or preconceived notions, right? What is that advice and suggestion that you have for, say, many other women who are, say, in the same space or in different spaces, right? Who are building, incredible tech, incredible products, right? And have to tackle this, say, disbelief, right? This lack of trust. What would that suggestion advice be?
Yeah, so one thing is, it is okay to make mistakes. It is, see, the minute you can forgive yourself, I think women are more perfect people who want to get perfection. They are not perfect, but they feel that they have to do everything to be perfect. So the self-criticism is very high. So for me, at least, and I see that in my friends, like we tend to see that even if it is cooking, even if it is managing, even if it is doing, and that's why when we don't have confidence, that's where you don't really go into that area. Money management is something which has been done from ages. It is either a male dominated thing. So though woman has the capacity, that was not imbibed or DNA'd into her system. So the perfect, the a little tinge of doubt whether I'll do it right or not is always bothering. When that is there, people don't tend to take, because there is always a criticism, self-criticism and criticism. So it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to do something wrong, but you can always come back, bounce back, and do it right, because after all, this is one life to remember, and take one day at a time. I think that is what it is. I say that it's okay to do mistakes. Do it.
I like how effortlessly you put it out, right? I think that's possibly the most important lesson. I think everybody's journey, right? Don't be too hard on yourself. I think that applies not just for women, I think, but also for men, right?
Exactly.
We tend to overthink, right? We tend to be, somebody's, opinion tends to affect us a lot more, right, than our belief in ourselves, right? And I think that's a beautiful takeaway, Archana, from especially the last point that you make, and I think the overall journey that you've sort of built, right? One thing that stands out, I think, one thing which is I mean, I've enjoyed this conversation, right?
Thank
And
you.
I've always believed, right, that when you are a consumer first, right, it's always easy to translate that into a product, and your association for that is much longer. And I think a lot what you're doing is possibly it stems from your own experiences of not
Yeah.
being able to say get that right advisory or those inputs, and some of the points that you kind of highlighted through the course of our conversation, right? And I think that's possibly the reason you're kind of breaking it down in the right way. I think money management requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of honesty and integrity. You're not going to have answers to all of these things, right? And I think that's how you're kind of breaking it down at technology level as well, where I think you're holding the hand of your your client, or these customers who are coming on your platform, and systematically building it up with them, right? Of course, you're kind of improving your ecosystem as well of understanding them around distribution, right? Which is incredible, right? I'm not necessarily a crypto fan, but that's something that you're evangelizing. Possibly there are buyers, uh, but it's good to see that. It's heartening to see what you've gotten to. We wish you all the very best, Ashna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for taking the time out, and look forward to having you with us much sooner,
Yeah, would love
and
to.
solving for many other problems that investors today have. All the very best.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you, Asha, and it was very entertaining. The questions were spot on. I really loved talking.
Thank you, Ashna.
Thank you. Bye.